In order to be able to explain and show different styles of mixes, let's map out how each piece of equipment affects imaging, the apparent placement of sounds between the speakers. Just about everyone has experienced the perception of sounds in a stereo mix as coming out of one speaker or the other, or somewhere in between the speakers. Now, if we pan a sound all the way over to the right, it's never going to come further right than the right speaker, right? But sometimes, you hear it coming from other places in the room if you've got a really weird room or if the walls are strange. But in a studio, you would never hear it further right of the right speaker. Now, if we pan it to the left, no matter how far you pan it to the left, it will never sound further left of the left speaker. Some people think it's only going to sound this far left. Some people see it a couple of inches or even a foot further left of the left speaker. So therefore, we can draw boundaries just to the left of the left speaker and just to the right of the right speaker. So panning is mapped out as left to right. When I turn the pan pot here, you can hear the sound pan from left to right and from right to left, like that. Now, we're not talking about reality here. Now, we're not talking about reality here because, you see, there's actually no sound between the speakers. The reality is the sound comes out of the speakers in waves, travels through the molecules into the room, hits the walls in the room, and it also hits your ears and your body. This is one way we perceive sound. Another way we perceive sound is we imagine it to be between the speakers. This is called imaging. It's a figment of our imagination. You see, when we hear a sound between the speakers, there's no sound really there. The truth is, the same sound's just coming out of both speakers, and we imagine the sound to be between the speakers. It's just a figment of your imagination, like an audio-optical illusion. Also, when you hear a sound in the middle of your head when listening to headphones, well, there's no sound there. Your brain's there.
Cool.
Even if you're asleep, sounds still hit your body and it affects you. On the other hand, if you aren't paying attention to a mix or if you're off to the side of the speakers, you don't hear imaging. When you're asleep, imaging does not exist. In fact, they've done studies of people who don't hear imaging because of the shape of their ears or because of the shape of their minds. Imaging is a figment of our imagination. In fact, there is no imaging in the forest. Different people relate to sound in these two ways. Many people just feel the sound and perceive the music that way. Other people actually see the imaging between the speakers. Recording engineers are often obsessed by these dynamics that go on in this imaginary world of imaging.
Good heavens, Miss Sakamoto, you're beautiful! Hey! I don't believe it! There she goes again! She's tied it up! I can't find anything! All my tubes and wires, careful nuts! Antiquated notions!
Now, let's continue with our mapping of mixing functions into the visual world. What about faders or volume controls? As you have probably noticed in some mixes, some sounds are right out front, normally vocals and lead instruments, while other instruments like strings and background vocals are often in the background. We'll map out volume as a function of front to back. This makes sense because louder sounds are normally closer to us, and softer sounds are commonly further away. Also, if we want to sound like a vocal to be out front in a mix, what do?
Turn it up!
Right. If you want something out front, turn it up. If you want something in the background, turn it down.
I guess that's why they call them background vocals.
Although volume is the #1 function of front-to-back placement, there are other pieces of equipment or factors that make sound seem more upfront, such as compressor limiters, boosting EQ in the mid-range or high-frequency range, short delays of less than 30 milliseconds, that's fattening, and any effect that makes a sound unusual, so that it sticks out. On the other hand, reverb and long delay times tend to make sounds more distant.
Well, distant thunder could be miles behind the speakers, right? However, this illusion is created from our past experience of thunder. Normally, we don't seem to hear sounds more than a short distance behind the speakers. Normally, background vocals and strings are only a few inches behind the speakers, right? Well, check it out around your own speakers. Different people do disagree as to how far behind the speakers they hear the sounds. Who am I to say your imagination sucks? Now, no matter how loud you make a sound in a mix, sounds will never seem to come from more than a short distance from in front of the speakers. No matter how loud you turn up the sounds will never come from here, and sounds will never come from behind you.
Unless you have a 3D sound processor.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother world and video.
This distance we imagine a sound to be in front of or behind the speakers is based on a couple of factors. First, the larger the speaker, the further in front the sound appears to be. Small studio speakers about 6 inches, a huge PA that's about 10 feet, or a boombox that's just 2 or 3 inches. The second factor that determines the difference in the way people perceive the limits of imaging from front to back has to do with the fact that some people have a more active imagination than others.
Now, one day, I noticed that high frequencies appear higher between the speakers, and low frequencies appear lower. Bells, cymbals, and strings seem to be right about here, whereas bass guitars and kick drums seem to be right about here. Check it out on your own system. Play a song and listen to where high-frequency sounds seem to be and where low-frequency sounds seem to be between the speakers. Most people agree highs are higher and lows are lower. That's probably why they call highs high and lows low. There are a number of reasons why this illusion exists. First of all, tweeters are often higher than woofers. But also, low frequencies come through the floor to your feet. High frequencies never come through the floor. Some studios are even calibrated as to exactly how many low frequencies come through to your feet. Another reason, though, is that we've got a low frequency resonator here, boosting the low frequencies, and we've got a high frequency resonator here, boosting the high frequencies. Singers, when they learn how to sing, are often taught if they want to bring out the lows, sing from down here, okay? So we have lows here, highs here. On a more esoteric level, there are energy centers that have been mapped out in the Far East. These energy centers are called chakras. At the base of our spine, they say it's 40 hertz. Around here is maybe around 800 hertz, 1,000 hertz, 5,000 hertz. Well, I don't know to say whether this is real or not, but at any rate, it helps explain why very likely low frequencies lows regardless of why it happens, the truth of the matter is that high frequencies do seem to appear higher between the speakers than low frequencies. Therefore, we'll put the high frequencies up high, and we'll put the low frequencies down low in all of our visuals. Now, no matter how high the frequencies in a sound, they'll never come from higher than the speakers themselves. I mean, they never come from the ceiling, right? You see, imaging is limited to the top of the speakers. Now, since bass frequencies come through the floor, the lower limit is down here, the floor, where the floor is. So check it out. No matter how far we pan the sound to the left, it's only going to go about this far. It's going to be a little bit in front of the speakers, a little bit behind the speakers, and to the top of the speakers. Then all the way across to the top, a little bit front, a little bit behind, down to the floor, all the way to the right speaker, about right here. Okay? So you can imagine this three-dimensional space right there. Now, this is a limited space between the speakers where a mix occurs. It only happens in this space right here. Therefore, if you have a whole lot of instruments, it's going to be crowded. Say you got a 100-piece orchestra. You put 100 instruments between these speakers and there's hardly any room, so it's hard to differentiate between every single sound. Whereas you put 3 violins between the speakers and you can hear every one completely separate from each other, because there's only so much space between the speakers here where you can create a mix. Therefore, the whole issue becomes that of crowd control.